Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Colin. I'm an English teacher working in Tokyo, and in today's video I'm going to talk about 5 reasons I think it is very useful to practice English with a native speaker or a native level speaker of English. So let's start with the first reason. The first reason is that you have instant feedback. When you're talking to somebody who's a high-level English speaker or a native speaker, you have instant feedback on pronunciation and you have instant feedback on grammar. And what I mean is that if you say something with incorrect pronunciation, or if you use grammar which is incorrect or confusing, then the person you're talking to will not understand what you're saying. They won't understand you, so that is your instant feedback. You will need to rephrase what you want to say. You might have to change your pronunciation a little bit, depending on what the problem is. But that instant feedback is really, really helpful, and it helps you to learn very, very quickly, because being in that moment, talking to somebody and having a communication problem, it really forces your brain to work very, very quickly and think, okay, I need to change something. What do I have to change? And anything that you learn in that moment is going to stay in your memory for a long time. I still remember moments where I've been speaking to somebody, be it Japanese or in Spanish, and there's some communication problem, but I've managed to discover what the problem is and being able to continue speaking. But I still remember those moments very, very clearly. So that's the first point, this instant feedback. If there's a breakdown in communication, you need to do something, you need to adjust something to continue the conversation. The second point I want to talk about is the fact that it's real communication. I'm an English teacher, I'm a language teacher, so I think the classroom is a really important place to practice a language. But when you're in a classroom, you are with other people who are learning that language. So when you do your little conversation practice with your partner, it's you as a learner and somebody else as a learner talking to each other. And that's really great. That's really helpful. To be able to talk to somebody is really important. But it's artificial. The conversations that you're having are artificial. The purpose of the conversation is to practice the vocabulary, practice the grammar, and that's okay. But there's no real purpose. Okay, so if you're talking to a native speaker or a near native level speaker in the real world, kind of outside in a real situation, maybe you're buying a train ticket, maybe you're in a shop, you're in a restaurant, wherever, you're having a real conversation about a real thing. So it's a very different experience, okay? You're not there to practice something. You're not using a set phrase that the teacher has given you. This is the real world, okay? It's very important to practice in the classroom, but there's a big difference between the classroom and the real world. So that's the second point I want to point out, because it's really important for motivation. To have that kind of purpose behind your conversation is really motivating, in my opinion. The third point I want to talk about is the difference between the textbook and real life. So again, the textbook is teaching you set phrases, maybe some vocabulary, maybe some grammar, but sometimes these phrases are not natural. I'll give you an example. I had a colleague many years ago, and she was an English teacher, but she had learned these set phrases when she had learned English. She was a Japanese teacher of English, and she had learned these set phrases. So I remember one day I introduced a friend of mine to her, and she said to my friend, "May I have your name?" Okay, so she didn't know my friend's name, so she said, "May I have your name?" But what she really wanted to say was, "What's your name?" But that's a very different phrase. "May I have your name?" and "What's your name?" "May I have your name" is okay if you are working in a hotel, for example, and a customer comes to the front desk. The receptionist might say, "Oh, may I have your name?" because they want to check the reservation, for example. But in an informal situation, meeting a person, "May I have your name?" sounds very strange. So there's a big difference to what you might learn in a textbook and how people really speak, okay? The way that people speak in real life, we can call colloquial language. And that's really about language that is mainly spoken rather than written. So there is a difference between what you might see written down and what people might say to each other. So that's kind of the third point that I want to highlight, the difference between real life and the kind of the textbook side of language. The fourth point that I want to highlight is that the challenge of speaking quickly to a native speaker. People are busy. Everyone's busy these days. Everyone has places they need to be, things they have to do. If you speak slowly, really slowly to somebody, they'll probably get quite bored. And they'll want to go and talk to somebody else, or they'll want to go and do something else. So if you speak too slowly, it's really tough for the person you're speaking to. So talking to a native speaker kind of challenges you to move quite quickly, to produce language quickly, to keep the other person interested. You don't want to bore the other person. I have some students who do speaking practice. For me, they record themselves on video using their smartphone, and they speak very clearly. Vocabulary is good, grammar is good, pronunciation, intonation, stress, all of that is good. But the problem they have is that they speak too slowly. So what they need to find is the balance. They need to speed up their speaking, and maybe they'll make some grammar mistakes, maybe they'll make some pronunciation errors, but that's okay, because you need the balance between accuracy and you need the balance with speed. Because as I said, if it's too slow, no one's going to listen to you for very long. They'll want to go and do something else with their life, okay? So that balance between accuracy and speed, I think, is important, and that's something that you can practice with a real person. If you're speaking slowly, and you will be able to see that that person is getting bored. Maybe they start checking their watch, or they're looking around, or they're they're not really listening anymore. That's a good indication that you're speaking a little bit too slowly. The last thing I want to talk about is that talking to a real person, talking to a native level speaker or a native speaker, it's fun. That's the fun part of language learning. Nobody learns a language because they love textbooks. Oh, I just love textbooks. That's why I want to learn the language. No one really enjoys using textbooks. They like using the language. Very often I ask my students, why do you want to learn English? And 9 times out of 10, they will say they want to communicate with foreign people. They want to communicate with people around the world. And I think it's important for students to remember that, it's the communication part that they really want. They don't want to, students never say to me, oh, I want to learn English because I want to learn all the grammar. They don't say, I want to learn English because I want to have a huge vocabulary. Nobody learns a language for those reasons. They learn it because they want to engage with people, talk to people, learn about the world. Very often my students see English as a way to access information around the world. So remember that speaking is the fun part. The grammar practice, the drills, the reading, whatever, it's all important. But the fun part is when you actually speak at the end of it. So those are the 5 reasons I think speaking to a native speaker is important. So the instant feedback, purposeful communication, the difference between textbook and real life communication, the challenge of speaking quickly, and the fact that speaking is the fun part. Never forget, the fun part of language learning is actually producing language, talking to somebody. Okay, so I hope you found this video useful. If you did, make sure you like the video, subscribe, share it with a friend, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.